Rhonda Godwin's story about John to Linda, May 11th, 2015. I've recently learned you are writing about John Myslicki, and I would like to tell a little bit about my experience with the man. Mother Teresa once said, "We sometimes think that poverty is only being hungry, naked, and homeless. The poverty of being unwanted, unloved, and uncared for is the greatest poverty. We must start in our own homes to remedy this kind of poverty." This is where John found me and my 2 grandsons. But we were suffering all of the above except homelessness. Our well was broken. We had no water except what I was able to collect from rain. There was plenty, I just had to carry it, enough to keep everything clean. I boiled our drinking water and filtered it as it came off our shingles. We had no heat. Thank God, because of it we were put in the path of an earth angel, John Myslicki. Mold was becoming a problem at one end of the mobile. We had a home in desperate need of maintenance, but at least we had a roof over our heads, for which I was truly grateful. At 58 years of age, I found myself dumpster diving for the first time in my life to feed the little boys, aged 5 and almost 2, and our furry kids, dogs that had saved my life, literally, and cats I'd had forever, part of our family. I never lost faith, nor truly felt humiliated, though I had to quit this practice after only 2 times as people started throwing rocks at me when I tried to retrieve food from behind the local Sobeys that the manager of the store had told me I could. I never lost faith that this incredible struggle, this black cloud over us, had a silver lining, and was only one more opportunity for growth, for a true understanding of what so many of my fellow human beings were endlessly enduring. The local gas companies refused to come out to my little wooded acreage for less than a complete fill, which was over $400. No matter, all 3 companies were aware that I had 2 little boys. My son had sent me $300 for oil, but they still said it wasn't enough. I had never been in arrears with any of them and could not believe their refusal. But this was Nova Scotia, and if you weren't born here, you are basically human refuse, unless, of course, you have a lot of money. I didn't have it, so I started looking on Kijiji for a wood stove as winter was approaching. I found one for a little over $100, but even that was a terrible amount for me at that time. I wasn't on any kind of assistance, but got a tiny amount, $300, in alimony, and whatever the boy's mother decided to send. She was having serious issues, and we could count on little from her at the time. She found her way again and exonerated herself. Though I lost patience with her, John never did, and insisted I never give up hope, though there were times when I did. When I think anyone would have, except maybe Mother Teresa and John Myslicki, and now hopefully me. I decided to try and find out if the stove on Kijiji was a safe one, as it had to be government approved, so I got on the net with the serial number. As I was in a hurry, afraid it would be sold, I went to different wood stove sites and left my phone number. No one had answered by the next day. By the time I decided to trust in the signs, yes, I live by signs and wonders, and simply drive the 3 hours to get the RSF stove, the address where we went to pick it up, 111 something Drive, told me it was my stove. Yes, I know this makes me sound crazy, but that's okay, Linda. The whole experience with Mr. Myslicki had an absolute mystical quality from start to finish, and this was only the beginning. The little boys and I arrived back home in the early hours of the next day. When I went to hitch up the U-Haul trailer I needed to haul the heavy wood stove, I discovered someone had stolen the hitch off the back of my van, so we were late in picking it up, having to put it in the back and proceed down country roads very slowly. The return trip took 7 hours. As tired as I was, I decided to check my email when we got home, and there was one from a John guy. I emailed back that I had already purchased the stove, and all that was left to do was to have it inspected. He offered to pay for the inspection, and I emailed him back, thanks but no thanks. I told him if he really wanted to give away $100 to a stranger, that I knew someone, the only street person I knew personally, who needed it even more than I did, someone who was on the streets without a winter coat. I thought that would be the end of that. Yes, I was somewhat suspicious of a perfect stranger who was offering money. I also thought that the supernatural help I'd gotten from God was simply a good stove for cheap that would keep the kids warm for the winter. The next morning, immediately after my Bible study, we'd quit going to church as each time we did, our home was robbed, which was all about giving, receiving, the promises that are attached to such, which seemed to sink deeply into my soul that morning. Thoughts of the divine grace that have been afforded to me so many times over the years. I've, quite frankly, lived quite a life full of difficult circumstances, which I've come out of remarkably well, and after a while one realizes the gratitude owed to a God who has never left me. The phone rang. My Bible was still open beside the phone where I had marked and read the words I'd received. I felt a little sick when I heard the man say he was the one whose email I'd received in the night with a free offering. Nothing is free, right? But my eyes were drawn to the passage as he spoke, and the little wheel in my brain went click. This is true. This is real. The only price demanded from this agent of God's will be and is that you pay it forward. I checked later after the call. It didn't surprise me that he'd called at 10:11 a.m. Yes, the blessings promised in Deuteronomy 1:11, if we keep his sayings and do them. At the end of the conversation, John said, "How about if I just send you the $1,000 you need to inspect and install the stove?" A new floor had to be put in, a firewall, proper piping, venting, holes cut, etc., etc. I accepted gratefully, absolutely blown away though. It was already early November, and I was tired of being cold, always wondering how we were to survive. I'd come from a lower middle-income family and had known no real hardship growing up, and it was a bit much for me at times, but I honestly trusted in God to save us out of our troubles. I think of John Myslicki on par with many of the saints, and though he is not Catholic, I believe, truth be known, to a higher mind than ours, he will be a saint in paradise someday. We never got the stove installed. When John learned the whole truth of what was happening, he helped us get back home to Saskatchewan, helped us hold it together. So a mother is now united with her fatherless boys, so those boys are even alive. It's not a pretty story until you get to the end. Helped a grandmother who was actually very physically unwell at that time to recover. He helped. He is still helping. If he dies before I do, long after he is gone, he will still be helping. When the world is beating me up and my soul is sick, I suddenly remember how much I am loved by the true powers that be, and my spirit is lifted high. John Myslicki's treatment of me and mine is my absolute proof that we are worthy. These are not just words, Linda. John Myslicki's generous, good heart has had me on my knees, full of humility, fearing I could never be close to being as good as that man, no matter how I tried. A flood of tears and gratitude to God for rewarding my hard work, my tears, my prayers, my hopes that seemed so many times to bear no fruit, with his godsend, John Myslicki. He is a savvy, gutsy man who sees to the heart of a matter in less time than it takes the rest of us to count to 5. But yes, he is still only a man who also experiences pain and suffering in his own life, a condition of living. He is different in that he never lets his own trials destroy his phenomenal compassion, as seems too often to be the case, but I suspect only increases his empathy for other sufferers. He is not a man to dwell on the negative, and sometimes becomes irritated by those who refuse to see the good when it comes. But that is sometimes what it takes to give people a mental shift. He is Christ-like, in my opinion, and lives by the golden rule of doing unto others as he would have them do unto himself. All who encounter him are enriched by his difference. His endless care for those in the world, not just those in his own family, whom Mother Teresa spoke of, the unwanted, unloved, uncared for, who are often poor spiritually above all else, and need desperately a showing of good, whether it be a kind word, a smile, some cash, a hard word on occasion, just someone, anyone who cares. John cares. He's Polish. Did you know? I bet he shares common ancestry with St. John Paul the Great. Serious. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like I'm going to get to meet John in person on May 23rd. Circumstances have conspired to make me broke at this time. I'm recovering from foot surgery, not working. The disability people shorted me, but things are not bad at all. We have more than enough to eat. I have a car with plates on it this month. No money for gas. And I am better by the day, and even walking again. We have a phone with long distance and dial-up computer. My blood pressure is under 200. We have lots. The boys are in soccer for the first time. We are blessed. But, like the rest of the world, we need. Doesn't end, does it? I had the money, then someone who needs it more than I came along. It is my son who has helped me out many times, and now is in no position to help even himself. So the money to go and see John in person went to my son. I think this is fitting. I believe God knows I did what my conscience told me to do. I listened. I know John will understand, though he will be a tad disappointed, as I was going to bring the boys he saved. Just wish I could have done both, but maybe I would become complacent, as John obviously never has if I had so much. Perchance I am a little like the woman in the Bible who only gave a little bit, but it was all she had, and her little bit was most valued. I still trust God will save my boy, and perhaps the day will come when he will help me again, even to get out and see John yet. I was looking forward to meeting you, Linda, perhaps another time. I can never repay what John has done for us, except to follow his example when I can, and to be grateful to God for having encountered the angel man, Mr. Myslicki. His example has restored faith in many. I tell those I can about what he did for us. Some seem angry at first, but it is always my chance to tell them about the love of God for us undeserving, stupid beings, and I know it has helped many change their outlook. He came out of the blue. I finally asked him for a photograph. I'll try to insert it here. Note the date on it. 1/1/11 at 1:12. He told me his digital camera when I inquired by a minute. He was unaware of Deuteronomy 1:11, was off according to his cell phone. So that's 1/1/1 at 1:11 p.m., January 1st, 2011, at 1:11 p.m. 7 ones. 7, the number of change. We were finally back home in less than 2 months of his first email, after 7 years of misery in the East. But please note, some of the kindest Nova Scotian strangers one could ever meet came out in numbers in those last 2 months, some preceding or forerunning what was about to happen with John. His children are everywhere. We were blessed. John Myslicki lives to give. It is the ultimate high, the greatest fun for him, to make others happy, to teach others the way, to give relief to those in need. We love him forever.